I'm gonna do a short talk today, and it'll be like kind of interactive. We can even have it be more like a workshop. I want to talk about the subject of the experience of AI dialogue. I think that where we're at today, we still haven't gotten there yet, and I'm interested in exploring some of the ways in which we have not gotten there. And I have a couple of ideas that I'm going to share about how we might be able to cross this uncanny chasm that we currently still have in the world of AI dialogue. My background, he just mentioned it. I sold $1 billion worth of t-shirts at Teespring, and now I'm running HF0, which is an awesome residency for top founders. Check it out. But the reason why I'm doing this talk is actually because I was in HF0 myself as a founder before I joined as a partner. And while I was there, the thing I was building was this platform called Uncanny, which was basically trying to solve problems in AI dialogue. And I did a bunch of stuff. These were some of the just random experiments, and also did voice stuff. So I've been a big fan of this space and trying to crack some of the problems in it for a while. So that's just some of what I'm sharing. So what we're going to talk about is the problem. The problem is that dialogue agents have bad conversational UX. And then why does it matter? Pretty much, it's because emotions matter, and our current AI dialogue experiences lack emotionality. So I think we'll talk a little bit about that. I think there's actually a lot of use cases that are bottlenecked right now on this like lack of emotional bandwidth. And then I'll talk about some solutions, which I'm also kind of curious to see if anyone else has ideas on this. I think the probably most interesting one is this idea of like busy listening. So I'm going to get to that soon. So today's dialogue agents kind of suck. Just to demonstrate why, I want to introduce this concept of affordances. So y'all probably familiar with this book, Design of Everyday Things. If you're not, you should definitely check it out. It's awesome. But the idea of an affordance is like, if you interact with some design object, it could be anything, it has capabilities. Like, for example, like this chair has the affordance that you could sit on it. It's like, I can, do this. It also has the ability to be folded in half. That's another affordance that the chair provides. So there's actually kind of, and I can pick it up from here. Those are like the three things that I can do with it. When I'm talking to a person, I think there are affordances in that context of a conversation. So what I'd like to do is actually have someone come up here and talk to me. And I just want everyone to kind of notice some of the things that happen in the conversation, and also compare it to what would happen in a conversation with an AI as it exists today. So I probably don't need to do, has everyone in here recently used like GPT voice? Y'all have like experience, I don't need to do a demo of that. You've seen what it's like. It's, so here, who wants to come talk to me? You will? All right, cool. Come up here. All right, what's your name?
Dev.
Evan. We've met before.
Yeah, we have.
Amazing. All right. So tell me a little about your day.
Oh, just been sitting in lots of sessions, mostly in this room.
Okay.
Most of them were pretty interesting. And yeah, excited to see yours.
Cool, thank you. So does anyone have any ideas of things that just happened in that interaction that would not happen in a ChatGPT interaction?
Something that I noticed was both you saw when the door opened and like looked over there and kind of was recognizing that.
Awareness of the situation, yes, that's good. What about just even in our dialogue though? Like, okay, here's
like mutual context, like how you already were familiar with each other prior to this conversation.
That is true. So here are some of the types of things I'm thinking about. So when Dev started telling me about his day, I was like, yeah, Like, I didn't actually respond to him really. I was just waiting for him to tell me more about his day. I'm not just like immediately saying like, thank you, that's so great. Like, tell me more about your day. There's this sense of like, I'm waiting to hear what you will say. We might pause. I might pause. And he might not respond because he senses that I'm actually going to say something else. Or maybe I'll like prompt him to talk. Go ahead.
Talking.
So like these are all things that kind of don't happen in today's AI conversations, right? They lack this sort of meta conversational awareness. It's like they can respond, they can figure out what to say, but there's all these affordances, like just this ability to kind of engage. And then this is just the tip of the iceberg, but these are some examples here. Thank you so much. Let's give them a hand. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things. There's reactions, there's acknowledgments, there's little moments of laughter, there's the emotional peaks and valleys, there's changes in the cadence of the conversation. Like we might switch back and forth between something where you say something, I say something, you say something, I say something. So more like one person goes on for a long time. There's changes in who's going versus who's listening. Like all of these things happen in normal conversations that currently do not happen in conversations with AIs that I've experienced at least. And I think this is because today's dialogue agents are stuck. They're stuck in this space right here. They're actually stuck at the command line prompt enter moment, because where they are is a factor of, it's basically a legacy factor of how we got here, how we got to having a conversational agent to begin with. It's like, the sort of chat experience. You input your text, and then the inference happens and the output comes, right? Like that is actually the underlying capability that the AI has, but that's now also become the paradigm upon which we communicate with AI, but it doesn't have to be. So they're stuck in this moment of, I say something, you say something. It's like there's always this moment that doesn't exist in normal human conversations where someone like smashes like the enter button. Like the AI doesn't, I've never experienced an AI conversation up to this moment, which doesn't have this sort of like, whether or not it's like a literal hitting of the enter button to signal that it should reply, or if it's like waiting for you to be silent for long enough or something in a voice conversation that it sort of infers that you have hit the symbolic enter button. But normal conversations don't really have this enter button. They're just, it's a continuous flow. What we have today is this. We have, I say something, ping pong dialogue, boom, I pass it back to you. And granted, like this is fundamental to dialogue. Like at the end of the day, I do say things, you say things, but this is limiting. And what I think is really happening is that our dialogue agents today lack a sense of temporality. They don't really have a moment-to-moment awareness. They don't have a sense of time. An example of this would be like if I say, hey, how are you? Versus, hey, how are you? They're different. But like you won't get that from today's language models. Maybe if you have a better model, you could. But what are we trying to get out of this? So what we ultimately want is we actually want AIs that are emotionally coherent, that can understand our feelings, that can express their own feelings. We want them to be conversationally fluent. We want the UX to reach the same type of UX we have with humans, and ideally we would want it to actually surpass. I think maybe there's a question some people might ask, should we want this? Like, is this actually good? Will it replace humans? I don't know. That's not the point of this talk. I'm not going to address whether or not we should want these things. I think that this is probably going to be cool because if we had this, then I think you could have a situation where basically more people would be able to benefit from some of the kind of companion and persona aspects of AI. And I also think that for some business and utility applications, the lack of emotional awareness is actually really holding back dialogue agents from being able to achieve many goals. As far as the companion and persona applications go, if you look at what's happening today with like character AI and stuff, you kind of have the users as like the nerds who are willing to suspend disbelief in order to go into this fantasy world and have these chats with AI bots that are kind of not that realistic, but not as often, but it hasn't spread as much to the mainstream. But those people are getting a shitload of value out of this. I mean, you can just see that from the fact that they're, people will use it for 2 or 3 hours a day on average. Like if you look at some of the stats from some of these character dialogue platforms, it's actually kind of crazy. but when is that going to come to the rest of us? I think that it will when the UX of the conversations actually starts to mirror more closely the UX of a natural human conversation. And even for business and utility applications, you can kind of see that whether or not you like talking to a bot could be a determinant factor in whether or not it's to be able to be effective as a sales agent or as a recruiter or as a whatever, this, that, other thing. Like, if like enjoyability of the interface actually does matter, and we just haven't been putting, I think there hasn't been enough energy being put towards this yet. So yeah, we have that. Okay, so that's kind of just a little bit about the problem space. I want to talk about some of the possible solutions to this. So let's say that you just tacked it with today's toolkit of LLMs, agentic flows, language chaining. You could start to do this thing where you basically like, I'm going to build up this like meta conversational toolkit, and I'm going to give my bot the ability to like pause or to interrupt or to plan out what it's going to say or to laugh or to this or to that. And I can do all of these things, and then I'm going to create, on top of my my prompt, I'm going to have like a analysis engine that continually analyzes the conversation and then decides which of these conversational tools to apply. That could be one approach. I've kind of hacked around on this. I don't think it works that well. I think it's very like brute force. It also is not really like, it doesn't feel very ML native. I think it could be interesting, but I think it naturally sort of leads to this question of, should we just make a bigger model that is maybe had a couple of possibilities, like maybe timestamped chat data, so that there's also a sense of temporality and of like when to send things, of how many messages to send. Like maybe you could build like a really good training set of time-stamped chat data that would then create a much more lifelike chat companion, or audio training data. Like if you put enough real dialogue audio into a model, could it start to be more able to do some of these things? Or in general, would there just be like OpenAI coming out with a giant multimodal model that somehow solves all of this? I definitely think a lot of progress will be made, but I still feel like there's going to be a missing piece, even if you do this, because at the end of the day, you're still going to confront the same problem unless you start to actually think about, like I was saying, the sort of like basic system. It's still going to be based on this moment of like, okay, all of your inputs in, boom, you hit the enter button, now what comes out? And that is just not actually, that may actually have limitations, because when do you hit the enter button? Like, when do you hit the enter button for me to, while Dev is saying his day, for me to be like, yeah, like that's a different paradigm. So I have an idea. This is probably super naive. I want to just put this out there. I'm not an ML engineer. I'm just someone who likes hacking around and applying it. But I have an idea that I think could be interesting for how to do this, that, I don't know, I guess the whole point of this talk is I hope maybe someone will be inspired to try to build this. So I was thinking, what if we built a model, not a model, but an application that constantly ran inference on the whole system using, ideally with this like better training data stuff, but was just constantly busily listening, as in like we just, let's say like every second, it analyzes, okay, what inputs do I have into the conversation now? And then the response would be not only what should I say, but also when should I say it? So more like putting a pin into a future moment of when I should say something. So this would sort of mirror like if I'm talking to Dev and he says, oh, I love, ice cream. Oh, and I would like, maybe there's like immediately like, yeah, me too. But maybe if he's like talking for longer and he mentions, ice cream procedures, then maybe my response starts to get buffered as like, oh, once he stops talking, I'll mention something about how I used to make ice cream as a kid. This way of doing it would potentially allow you to create that kind of experience where there's timings are different, and whether or not to even respond, I think could also be covered by this. Honestly, I don't know, but I'd be very curious to hear if other people have tried this or thought about other things. Yeah.
So would this look like for every token you give the model, it's running inference every single time, but 90% of the time it's deciding not to say anything, but it has the option to like say, yeah, go on, like at every single token.
Yeah, it could be at every single token. Yeah. Have anyone ever built anything like this? Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't done that. I just have some thoughts. Like, I feel like this will very depend on like the mode of input.
Yeah.
I feel like if it's like voice, like there is like a lot of stuff like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a voice. So with text, like I think I do this often, like where I like, type a bunch of stuff and like I was like realize like there's a better way to say it, or like I don't want to say it, and I would like deduct it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a better design where the application can also read in like what you didn't send out.
Mm.
Like I feel like that's a more, you know how like when we're texting in real life with like real person,
Yeah.
there'll be like a bubble showing up like when you're typing even though you didn't send it out.
Yeah.
And that kind of awareness adds more cadence to the conversation with between real people in the text. So I was wondering like maybe
Yeah.
everything you put it in the input format.
Right.
The LM can also see like maybe not they cannot see exactly what you put in,
Mm-hmm.
but they can see like you're putting a lot of stuff and like what time and what speed and what cadence and then respond to that.
Yeah, no, I think that just like if you're talking about like a chat experience, like a type chat, I do think just having that awareness of whether the person's typing and how much they're typing and that being a part of the input to how the system responds could be something that adds a lot of more of this kind of dynamic aspect. Yeah, go ahead.
Parameter maybe for like how much a speaker just likes being interrupted. Because I think that would be the failure mode for me. I would just feel like frustrated because I wanted to say more stuff and it was like interrupting me.
Yeah, I mean, if it was interrupting you, it would be annoying. And I sometimes experience that. Like if I'm talking to an AI, I'm pausing, but then it starts responding to me. And then other times, but it's like I would actually like it to respond to me with maybe just like yeah, but instead it's like gonna say this long thing. So most of what I want to do in this talk is just call attention to this as an issue, that's something that should be worked on, and that I also think it's going to be a really big business opportunity to solve some of these problems.
LM
Yeah.
has some research out from DeepMind showing what they call disfluencies,
Mm-hmm.
which they add into the audio,
Mm-hmm.
which are the filler words, the sort of like things that make it sound more realistic. And that's a conversation between two sort of agents or two AIs, but you could imagine that kind of disfluency, like if it were jutting into say like yeah or like huh, that could make it feel more lifelike.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, another thing I've been thinking about is how to make the AI more emotional. So one example conversation that I would have with an AI that I think wouldn't happen with a person is if you just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Like LLM by default, its natural response to that, at least today, will just be to keep responding to you in the same way. And isn't that just appropriate because it's just going to keep getting, the prompt is just going to keep filling with more and more of examples of it responding in the same way. Why would it change how it responds? But if you talk to a person, if you keep saying the same thing to them, they'll eventually get annoyed. They'll eventually be like, are you okay? Like, why did you keep... So how can we add that into an interaction with an AI? Something would need to change over time. Again, I don't really have any solutions here, really solutions. This is more like solution directions that I'm curious if other people have explored or seen things in, that as you continue to talk to it, even if you do say the same thing over and over again, is there a way to get it so that it starts to shift and maybe incorporate some of these emotional aspects like annoyance or curiosity? Like let's say that you were another instance to just ponder, I guess, would be, how could you create a bot that if you were to just be silent, at some point would be, hey, are you still there? That feeling of kind of presence, that it's actually witnessing the moment in the situation, and seeing that you haven't responded might actually be information that it would note. So I think that might be all I have. I just wanted to, just kind of open up these conversations. If you come across anyone working in any of these things, trying to build more emotionally intelligent AIs, trying to build AIs that understand time, dialogue, just generally better dialogue experiences, I'd love to meet them. I would love to invest in them. I'm trying to connect with people who are trying to solve these problems. So yeah, I think with that, I'll maybe just open it up and see if anyone have questions or thoughts. I would love to hear. Yeah. Go ahead.
Really interesting. Thank you. I know this wasn't the talk, but I would encourage people to explore the question of whether this is a good thing that should be worked. I mean, there was a story a couple weeks ago about a 14-year-old who was using character AI, got addicted to a chatbot there, and ended up killing himself. I don't think this is a moral panic. I think it's a real open question whether, especially children, but I would say even adults who may have mental health problems, actually benefit from a more lifelike UX for a conversational AI companion. I don't think we know, the research has not been conclusive about whether these things actually help people or whether they just sort of trap them in these one-way relationships that that can be very harmful to them. So I would just encourage people, like, I know this wasn't the talk, but I have to say that because I hear from so many parents now. I'm a journalist and I wrote about that story, and parents are really freaking out about this. So
in that case, that's a straw man, though.
say more.
Well, like the AI one trying to talk the person out of committing suicide, and it was more like a person who used this product also committed suicide. They didn't commit suicide because of the bot. The bot tried to talk them out when they went through. Like that's such a.
I think it's debatable, but I think even Character has changed their whole model and the platform design because they realized that they had young users who many of them were not having a good time on this app. People, you can go on Reddit and see the
not a bad thing. That's what you're telling me is that one. Character did not actually cause anybody to commit suicide, but they were still worried about it. So they nonetheless
worried after the story came out.
Well,
All right.
I think it's like outside.
Okay.
But I just
So-
I wanted to just
Yeah. Were you gonna say something? Okay. No. So yeah.
I actually do. So I came in like 5 minutes late, but like this talk of like real life conversation remind me of actually a YouTube video that Nerdwriter put out like 6 years ago. How to create realistic film dialogue. And he was talking about Noah Baumbach. Like this director had like who makes like indie movies had really realistic conversation dialogues because people constantly talk over each other.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
on the boundaries between
Exactly.
conversation. It's not like a ping pong.
It's not.
People trying to compete for power in that conversation, and like I guess in some ways like I wonder if like having like this is like I'm playing devil's advocate here, but
Sure.
and I wonder if like having the LM not as aligned and not as friendly would help with this UX issue. Because like so I actually wrote a tweet like months ago like about like,
Yeah.
I don't think about this.
Sure.
Like, so maybe like I feel like a lot of the chatbot we have out there that's LM-based is like in a way too sterile and too polite. They will only like reply to you after you hit enter, like you said.
Yeah.
Like but maybe the future of like the AI companionship and chatbot should be like a schizo roommate that constantly bothers you, like even though you don't really want it to.
Well, that's a really interesting point. Is that like also all of they never like the AI doesn't initiate the interaction really. And so I've seen some people try to hack this. My whole research initially was all around this. I wanted an AI that would initiate all the interactions proactively, start the conversations with me, text me at the right times. It's hard to build this in a way that doesn't just feel like an annoying notification on your phone that's like not well informed about what you actually want to hear and when. But then your friend texts you and your real life friend, for whatever reason, it doesn't create that experience. It creates a positive experience. So there's, what were you?
well,
But I think just to this point of like, look, we're almost at time, but like, should this exist? This will exist. Like, I think we're just in the era right now of like, if you ever go to an art museum, I think like technology will imitate life, just as art imitates life. Like you look back at some ancient depictions of people and you see something like this, and then you go forward in time, and at some point it's like, people figured out shading and they figured out like light, and then you have something that's like a photorealistic human being, right? And that's just where we're at right now. Like we're in like the smiley face stick figure era of like a persona, and we're going to go to this like more realistic human. I don't think it's a question of that. I do personally, I would like to ask questions of, once you have this, then what makes it safer? Then what makes it more of a positive experience? It might become more addictive, but also it might help people learn how to communicate and be better at actual human interaction than talking to a character AI that like just like is totally unrealistic as a person, is totally unempathetic, is not actually a good model of who you would want to be. Like, I don't want to be in a society of a bunch of people who've been talking to a bunch of ping pong dialogue character AI bots, and then therefore they come out and they're acting like that. Like, I would rather be in a society where people are talking to very realistic AIs that are actually like pinnacle of a emotionally empathic, good, well communicating, good listening person. So that's what I'm hoping we can move towards, but we're still a long ways off. And these two things, okay, go ahead, and then we'll wrap this.
They're just relevant to the discussion. One is Hume, you may have seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
A hint as to OpenAI's plans, you have to dig up an old Greg Brockman tweet, but he, I believe, generated an image with GPT-4o image generation, not yet released.
Yeah.
That basically said, what if we just model everything jointly, text, audio, and visual?
Sure, yeah.
Which does suggest that they're kind of trying to do something.
No, they definitely are.
Picture this.
Yeah.
And then third, interesting research on Replica, which does do proactive notifications, though I'm not really a Replica user, but my experimenting, it does feel very robotic. But nevertheless, and it's not that sophisticated as a bot, like way less than a character. Research out of Stanford did show reduction in suicidal ideation and more like inclination to go out into the world for users of the bot, which is a little bit surprising, but that isn't what the research found. So
I'm also using Replica in the pandemic, and it's probably a lot smarter since then, but I do feel like it helped with a lot of emotion that I had.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we're at time, so that'll be all.
One more hand for Evan.